Tom. And like you said, Aaron Poyer is our next speaker. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, just because we've had a few celebrities on here already. But Aaron is Benjamin Franklin's first cousin, 10 generations removed. So we're in the presence of greatness here. So you go ahead and take it away there, Aaron.
Sure thing. Thanks, Earl. Hi, everybody. How's it going? Give me 1 second here, and I will get my screen transfer over. A little glitch. Not quite as bad as Andrew's, but they never happen when things are convenient, that's for sure. Should be this one.
I think as soon as you said that, you froze for just a second, and everybody had a collective gasp. Oh, yep, coming through nice and clear. So there you go.
All right, great. So as was mentioned, I'm going to talk about the OT&E process for MROS, Manual Radio Sound Observing System, as opposed to our legacy RRS, which was Radio Sound Replacement System, replacing the old micro-ART, and was in turn partially replaced by the TROS, the Transitional Radio Sound Observing System, and not to be confused with our automated ones, the AROS, Automated Radio Sound Observing System. Help if I was on the correct monitor. Agenda here, I'm going to go through what our typical OT&E process for updates to systems is, and then where we started on our atypical process that we're currently in, where we are now, and where we hope and plan to go as time progresses forward. So in a typical situation, we would do a test to validate that the system meets all of our operational needs while being used in a limited deployment, following policy directives from NWS. And in this case, what we would do is we would step into our sites a lot slower than we are. And as problems arise, especially larger or more impactful problems, they would be addressed, fixed, and then we wouldn't go to more sites until we've done some regression testing. I don't know if all of you are familiar with the reason why we're rolling out faster, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So we would do our formal evaluation for the system under test is conducted first in an emulated operational environment, so an operation style but in a controlled environment, and then that transitions into the OT&E, which is conducted in a true operational environment at a limited number of sites, and that's to test the general fitness of the system for field operational use for technical objectives, specifications, requirements. And those are administered typically by us in the System Engineering Integration and Test Branch, which we are in the Office of Planning and Programming for Service Delivery under Kevin Cooley, and we answer to Benji Spencer, the Chief Engineer of the Weather Service. And within our group, our tests are coordinated by the test director for the particular one. In the case of ASOS and Upper Air, I am the test director. Like I said, we do this in limited operational deployment, and we focus on validation of the objectives following a successful system test, which verifies that the system functions and works, effectively an acceptance test, which in the case of this system was handled by the Sterling Field Support Center, ST&E Jennifer Dover. Again, typical process here, need and definition, design and development would be DTE, SIT, SAT, acceptance, integration, those types of functions. We move into the validation stage, which is what we're in now. And that includes the field site operational use and what we're calling an ST&E here, not to be confused with the ST&E that MROS was using, is security testing and evaluation, which we work together with the ISSOs on the software security aspects. And then it would move into production and deployment. Obviously, this is not a typical situation we're in, so it's a little different order. And then on into O&M. Typical life cycle of system engineering here. You have all of your development on the left side of this V. You start doing your testing on complete systems on the right side of the V, and then you move up and out into O&M, and then changes, upgrades, eventually retirement and replacement. At this point, we're in the stage of the system validation, which is kind of the exit of the right-hand side of the V. And then RRS is in the retirement and replacement portion of its V. The typical process purpose of OT is to validate system under test supports operations, meets or exceeds technical requirements, reliable, sufficient for operations, and has maintenance and other documentation available, as well as training and logistical support, and meets all the test objectives that have been identified by the program office or senior leadership. And typical prerequisites are that an RC has been approved, an ST or ST&E has been done, and there are no critical SIRs remaining. TRGs for those would recommend proceeding to OT&E. CCB concurs. Plans developed, coordinated, approved, and signed, and that there's a rollback process. Again, note this is typical. And then more prereqs, software, hardware have been delivered to OT&E sites, and documentation for installation, training, and switchover is in final or late stage workable drafts, not including but not limited to mod notes, install instructions, version description documents of all software and hardware, operation and maintenance manuals, and continuity of operations documents. And the NLSC has available parts, and the notifications have been sent or are ready to be sent. And for tracking issues, we are basically doing this both in a typical situation and in our current one, where whomever's participating in the OT&E reports it. In this case, for us, it's into a form. It goes to the OT&E director and chair. We make an initial assessment of an impact and priority. That's adjudicated by the OT&E voting members, the TRG test review group voting members, and then presented either to working team leads or to the upper air CCB, depending on how critical these are and what kind of resolution is needed, whether that be contractual change, things like that. So where did we start on this particular one when we got to the OT&E process? Well, as we hear a lot in the Weather Service, change is inevitable, and the goalposts shifted on us. In this particular case, our timeline was massively accelerated due to supplier circumstances outside of our NWS control, and that is when the announcement was made for who would be the vendors for the MROS systems. One of our legacy providers decided, hey, we're not in it. We're out of the upper air business. You'll get what you're contractually obligated to get sound-wise, but it was not enough to carry us to the end of our deployment schedule that we had for this. So this is why OT&E and full deployment are concurrent. The purpose is basically the same here. It's a little modified for us in this case. We're working with the program and the project office as semi-independent instead of almost completely independent to cover our validation of requirements and field use. There were changes to the requirements made during the process by senior leadership at Weather Service because of the hurry-up approach. And we are still collecting and adjudicating system issue reports. Our OT&E team members are Nick Schmidt is the test chair. He basically oversees that the process follows our policy directives, and then is there in case of a tie vote in the TRG to break that tie. He's also a voting member of the upper air CCB. Myself as the test director, managing all aspects of the OT&E, the coordination, capturing of concerns, conducting periodic meetings with the TRG and with other documentation groups, working with the vendors and the COR for the contract with the vendors to get move the resolution process along. And then we have our TRG members, which are represented by WFOs, region, other partners and stakeholders like NCEI, Navy, FinMOC, Air Force Weather, NSEP, and so forth. I know this was already shown by Tom for the GRAW system. Here's the basic block diagram from the training center. It really doesn't look all that different than RRS except for the antenna portion of it. These are non-moving and static antennas. And then the block diagram of the VISLA system. Again, the SPS for this is basically the same one we have in RRS. It's just an updated version of it. And then the antennas are a little different than the GRAW, but inside that dome, there's actually a series of 6 antennas that do your directionality and then one overhead. That's so there's 6 monopoles and a dipole overhead antenna. Test structure on our OT&E as we started when the deployment team arrived on the first site, and feedback would include comments, review of all documents, training, interaction with the deployment team, and other issues or challenges that were faced. And we continue collecting that information through all of our core sites, including but not limited to pre, in, and post-flight activities. So this would be prepping SONs, flying SONs, sending messages and so forth out from SONs, and filling out B-29s, B-85s, et cetera. Can also include issues with the deployment or help desk, or issues with any other process involved with the changeover from RS or TROS to MROS. These issues are reported to the test director, in our case through a Google form that we're using, where we are tracking this. The OT&E is kind of an open-ended completion date right now because of the way things were adjusted, and we are collecting information from full deployment sites. So even though most of you on here are probably not at what we had as our core OT&E sites, we are still more than glad to accept feedback from you. In fact, we encourage and appreciate it very greatly. And then our test review group is meeting right now bi-weekly. This will probably jump to monthly as we get further along the process. I do have some good news out of our TRG, and that is that we're starting to see a lot of duplicate CERs come in, which sounds bad, but is actually rather encouraging, because now that we're up to 10 plus sites, seeing the same problem over and over again is better than seeing new problems we haven't seen yet. We are awaiting new deliveries of software. So where are we now? As I said, our core group of OT&E sites, we have 10 of the 11 fully installed and operating. One is at Guam, the hardware is installed. The software is not operating. We are working with the vendor on a fix because Pacific region is WMO region 5, and their messaging per WMO standard is slightly different than ours. But the weather service uses the region 4 WMO messaging that's normal for our CONUS in Pacific region, because all that data is used by the National Weather Service and also by our other military and civilian partners that already are processing region 4. So there's some adjustments that are required on Visla's half to fix that. But we are still collecting CERs from any of the full deployments that are ongoing now. This is a little bit out of date because we had to have our draft slides into Tom last week. So I'm going to read off from a different monitor right now for updated information. We are currently at 217 submitted CERs, 171 of which are open, 46 of which have been closed. We also have 46 duplicate CERs. And that breaks down by vendor to 101 CERs for GRAW and 60 for Visla that are still open. And we also have another 10 open CERs that are not vendor specific. As far as the GRAW CERs go, we have 25 that have been closed, and Visla has 12 that have been closed. We are expecting a new software load to be delivered from GRAW at roughly the end of January, which would go through regression testing at Sterling Field Support Center and then start going out to the operational sites. I don't have an exact rollout date yet because a lot of that's very dependent on when we get it and what the regression testing shows. And for Visla, we're expecting a follow-on load that will address the Region 5 issues, as well as some others that will come out, be delivered to us probably at the end of February. And we hope to have that rolled out to field sites by early April. This is how to report system issues. If you don't have a link to the forum, feel free to reach out to me and I can send it to you. Where do we want to be? We want to have all of our operator sites rolled out using MROS, hopefully by the end of calendar 22 or very early calendar 23. Preferably, we would have no high impact 1 or 2 CERs outstanding. That is our typical exit requirement. And then all documentation, training materials would be revised, signed off by senior leadership and in good usable form. This would include increased information in the training center's documentation. We already know there's some issues there, not because of them, but because of information they do not have available to them. And then handover to full operations and maintenance would be ready to commence with approval of CCB and sign off from senior leadership. Right now, we're anticipating OT&E wrap up to occur Q4 of calendar 22. So probably in the October to November timeframe of this year. And I know questions at the end, so I'll skip that. And that's all for me, guys.
Yeah, no, good stuff. I really enjoyed that. And